Hello, everybody. So, welcome. Carlos did a great job with these slides for this week's Site Owner Academy. This portion of the academy will go on YouTube as well. Protocol deviations, right? And we have some CRAs on here as well on the site owner. We have a lot of CRAs that actually own sites. So, go figure. They're my heroes because I don't know how they can do both. And I'm sure they don't either. And one of them is eventually going to win, which is usually the site owner route. So, yeah, well, the slides are gone. What's going on? Okay, now they're back.
I just made sure I had hit record. We don't want to not
Oh,
record.
okay, good. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, deviations. Carlos did a good job with these. I mean, CRA perspective. And we have, like I said, 2 CRAs on this call live. So this is going to be interesting. There's deviations. I don't know, you CRAs that are on, feel free to talk. But every monitoring visit, you pretty much find a deviation, right?
Well, I would assume so, yes. For any CRA that wants to chime in, I would hope they find some sort of deviation or query, something that's wrong on new data. Otherwise, I would have to think if there's enough new data and there's no issues with any of it, that would lend me to think that there may be other issues going on
here. Right. So we'll go through some of these things in the next slide. This will be a short presentation, guys, we promise. So deviation log, everyone's best friend. Every monitor's best friend. You guys, I understand your CRAs, you may not want to talk, but deviation log, from my experiences as a monitor, deviation log is something that the sites don't really like to fill out. And I mean, it makes sense why. Nobody likes to document their mistakes or their errors. So this really falls on the CRA to make sure that the sites are doing this. And it's one of the most common ongoing action items to update the deviation log. So now what we want to tell the sites is there's no reason not to put your deviations on the deviation log. It's going, I mean, if the FDA comes to audit you, they're going to find your deviations. They're not going to see them because of the log. They're already going to know. They're going to go through all the documents. So, matter of fact, if you don't have them on the log, that could be a finding. So you should just put them on there when they're there. You're not going to be in trouble or anything. It's just a log to track your deviations. Okay, so somebody on Instagram saying we actually document it in my study who is entering deviation log and who's not.
here.
And the sponsor keeps their own deviation log too for the trial master file. So that, what do you think, Chris?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if there's anything I could add to that.
Well, as a site owner, you don't like, but you don't get paid for putting deviations on the log, right? So you have no interest in doing this as a site owner.
Well, I mean, you do have some interest in the site owner. I think the more manageable a site is, the easier it is to work with. Lends itself better to future trials. I mean, that's not the key criteria that the sponsor or CRA probably doesn't care, but that's not the key criteria the sponsor is looking at or caring about when it comes to utilizing a site. They care about can you get the patients, right? That's by far and away the key factor. But I think secondary is, are you good at your job, right? Are you collecting the data and entering it on time? Are you easy to work with from a CRA perspective? I mean, they care about that stuff too, but it's not first and foremost.
Okay. Yeah, we could go to the next slide. For the site owners, here's the difference. There's major deviations, but they all need to be logged on your deviation log, okay? Major deviations, basically if they affect a patient's safety, need to be reported to the IRB. Minor deviations don't have to be. When you're in doubt, ask your monitor. When your monitor's in doubt, they're going to ask their lead CRA. You want to make sure that the deviations you have to report to the IRB are being reported. You don't want these action items going on until closeout visit, because then your closeout visit's going to be a headache. And we've gone through, as site owners, many of these closeout visits that are much more difficult than they have to be. And I'm sure some of you CRAs on here on this Site Owner Academy.
And I would like to add to what you just stated. In my experience, most CRAs, regardless of major or minor, want the site to report them to the IRB. And the IRB, I don't know if you get irritated with this, they're 95, 98% of the time, at least with minor issues, even sometimes major issues, say we're not concerned with this, right? We're only concerned with patient safety. I think
Right.
I think CRAs just that's their fallback response. Deviation reported to the IRB. Period.
Right.
I don't know. I assume it's better safe than sorry in their mind, right? That they don't want to be the judge on what should be reported.
Yeah.
Shouldn't just leave it up to the IRB to decide. Anyhow, minor deviations don't
Leave
have
it up
to.
to the IRB.
Yeah, I think that's how most CRAs.
Yeah, no, that's a good strategy. But as a site owner, you don't. The last thing you don't want to. Hopefully, you can hear me clearly. Can you guys hear me clear?
Yeah, much better now.
So as a site owner, you don't want to, like, the last thing you want to do is have the FDA come in and then they ask you why you didn't report a deviation to the IRB, right? Because CRAs are human beings, like they can miss stuff. So just this is the rule for you as a site owner. If it affects patient safety and it was a deviation, you should report it to the IRB. When in doubt, just report it to the IRB anyways. They're going to tell you if it's not reportable, right? Like a patient is out of window. Sometimes that can affect patient safety. If they didn't have the IP because they're out of window, so they missed a few doses, that could affect patient safety. But if they had extra IP on hand and they didn't miss any doses, that doesn't affect patient safety. So same deviation might affect patient safety or may not affect patient safety, depending on the situation. So when in doubt, as a site owner, just submit it to the IRB. Last slide. Maybe it's second to last slide. We got to give like little actionable bite-sized pieces of advice every week to the site owners. So reportable deviations. Some deviations are necessary. So sometimes the site does deviation on purpose to reduce risk to the patient. Even if that's the case and that's the right thing they should be doing as per GCP, okay, that should still be documented as a deviation and it's still reported. All right, so as a PI, as a site owner, you're allowed to create deviations if they reduce or make attempts to reduce risk to patients. You shouldn't be doing deviations just because you feel like it or it's more convenient for you or you think this is a way to do the protocol that's better than the sponsor thinks. That's not the right way. That's the correct time to create a deviation. But when you do deviations, it's to reduce risk to patient. So CRAs must make sure the IRB and sponsors are aware of deviations when appropriate. That's the CRA's job. CRA should always focus on deviations that affect patient safety. All right, so a lot of this falls on the CRA, but I just interviewed a former FDA auditor, Patrick Stone, and he tells me when he goes to audit a site, they don't care what the CRA did or didn't do. They don't care what the sponsor said to do or don't do. They are holding the PI accountable for following the protocol. So if you're a site, don't wait for the CRA to catch something and then report it. If you know you need to report it, right? Because FDA could care less if the CRA didn't miss it. They're humans. They can, that's their job, right? Like they can make mistakes. So you, as a site owner or as the PI, need to make sure that you're doing your job, even if the CRA is not doing their job. And some PIs may disagree on what impacts patient safety. When this happens, sponsors are given the final say. Sponsors are called sponsor for a reason. They're paying for the study. You're not. You're getting paid to do the study. So when it comes down to PI versus sponsor, usually sponsor wins. But the PI may still disagree and think, okay, this is not okay for my patients. So they, in order to reduce risk to patient, the PI can deviate from the protocol. Anything else you want to add, Chris?
No, I think that was very good.
Maybe this is the last slide, or is there one more? Let's see.
We're gonna find
I'm
out.
curious now.
I'm hitting the button. Oh, there's one more.
Maybe there's more even after this. I don't know. This is the never-ending slideshow.
No, there's none. This is the last one.
No, this is the last one.
Not a never-ending slideshow, thankfully. So,
All right, take it away, Chris. The last slide.
absolutely. Identifying deviations is key. Monitors should pay special attention to process errors and consistent errors from the site. So, yeah, I mean, special attention to process errors. So, not sure what Carlos means by, what does he mean by process errors? Not clicking for me, Dan.
Oh yeah, no, this is what constitutes kappa. This is everything, and at the site level. If you're if your site, if you're a site owner, you need to be careful with process errors. If your site is constantly making the same errors, all right, that's a process issue that might require a kappa, corrective action, preventative action.
So,
You as the PI and you as the site owner are responsible for making sure this doesn't happen. All right. For example, I had a site that each time they would consent, they would go through a checklist, right? Like in their SOPs, it says we have to go through a checklist during our consent to make sure that the process of consent was followed. Well, the process error when this new coordinator came on board was they were not doing that. And that's a process error, all right? That's going to create multiple deviations. And you can correct this process as a site or as a CRA, but again, as a site owner, you don't wait for your monitor to tell you something's wrong. If you know it's wrong, you need to fix it. Right? So there's a lot of process errors that can take place from a site, and they should be corrected by the site owner. Or even if the SOPs need to be revised, they need to be revised.
so then anything could be a process error, no?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Anything could be a process error.
Anything you're doing at the site for collecting data, any error involved there is a process error.
Yeah, and if it causes multiple deviations that can be prevented, the FDA is going to say, well, how are you fixing this? What's your corrective action, preventative action? Right? So that's the next bullet point. And again, I think the theme for this week's Site Owner Academy is if you're a site owner or you're a PI, you don't wait for the monitor to find something. If you need to find it, right? You need to have staff that can find it. And the FDA is going to hold you accountable as the PI for this. So make sure that you take care of these things. Don't just rely on the CRAs. Most CRAs are very good and do their job. Some of them have so much going on they miss things. It's human. And others, unfortunately, are not so good and they don't catch almost anything. Well, guess what? FDA could care less about that. They care about you and how you are operating your studies at your site.
So are you recommending that if I were new to listening to your information that you provide, I would assume you're recommending all sites should have some sort of quality assurance program.
Yeah, and it's actually we actually have to change that for the terminology because I got it corrected. It's actually quality control that is like what a in-house monitor would be at a site basically. It would be quality control. But yeah, essentially yes, that's correct.
So are you recommending that all sites should have that?
I think the site owner needs to be okay, so I think I'm not recommending that. I'm recommending that that process gets done any way they can. If that means the site owner does it, then that's fine. If that means the PI does it with maintaining appropriate oversight, that's fine. Or the site may need to hire like a QC person, quality control, that just does this nonstop.
Right? Right. Don't know if I agree with
It's a
that.
good one, guys.
Especially for new sites, certainly the site owner can do it, absolutely. But hiring somebody, I don't think something many new sites are going to want to do.
Definitely not new sites, but it's something new sites would want to think about. Because to
Yeah.
do a really good job of QC, like to do a good job of quality control is a full-time job once your site gets busy.
All
So
right.
something sites should consider. And yeah, usually like for our sites, it's me and you, Chris, until we've promoted other people to do it. So somebody's doing this stuff constantly. And
All
thank
right.
you everybody for watching and listening. We'll stop going live now so that the site owners can have a confidential and safe space to discuss everything.